I really liked it, and I particularly liked the interactions between man and man A. I thought that was a different take on AI, that you would be interacting with yourself, and I thought that was very interesting. I didn't understand the whole God thing.
Okay.
And why it was in there. I mean, was it in there because, I mean, the whole point is this is an experiment in learning about emotion. Is that what it finally comes to? That's sort of the end. That's the reveal at the end, that this is actually was just a big experiment.
Yeah.
And what they're learning is how machines learn emotion.
Yes.
And so God was in there because of that sort of some basic. Why was God in there? I guess I should just ask you.
Well, I guess because I'm quite a religious person.
Okay.
Not like super religious, but I do believe in God. Like in Buddha, I'm a Buddhist. So for some reason, I kind of think those scientists, they are playing God without permission. So
yes.
So for me, it's very interesting to initiate some conversation about that, and in a very sarcastically, since man A is probably played by one of the human beings to trick man into this game, into this experiment. So I was kind of thinking, Joe, the part that you didn't get is that you didn't quite understand why man initiate the talk or the subject about the God. Is that a question?
Well,
or you don't?
I guess I didn't understand if the point of the experiment was to teach an artificial intelligence about emotion, where God would come into it. I mean, I'm an atheist, and so I feel as though I have a perfectly well-developed emotional life without belief in God. And so I didn't know where God fit into the experiment of emotion.
Maybe I was too naive about this. I take it for granted that when one is confused and couldn't seem to solve certain questions in his head, they will automatically go for God or go for some higher spirits. That I think I took it for granted that. So I assume that when the man he's confused about love, he's confused about his emotions, he's confused about what's going on in his life, and at some point, even when and for me it's very interesting that he started to raise this question when he feels happy.
Yeah.
When at the point that he's having such a good time with man A, and at this point he started to he even doubts this happiness. So all this happiness, sadness, and where is it from? And so that's the moment when he raised the question about God. Yeah. So that's why I put that there.
I think maybe the distinction is in how possibly the difference between sort of a traditional Western monotheistic religion and something like Buddhism. Because I mean, I could understand that in a moment of crisis, I would look at something more spiritual, something like like I meditate and I think about things in, I guess, a more Buddhist perspective. But I don't think of that as God. I think of that as spiritual. And what I think of as God is a much more sort of Western monotheistic thing, which is not something that I go to at all when I'm having a crisis. But if your audience will understand that distinction, I was bringing a very Western perspective to it, that God is this kind of central thing that I don't think has, that I just don't believe in. But but if you do, and that's important, then you should leave it in there.
But I also think that's a good point, that if the play is aimed at a both Eastern and Western audience, generally speaking, in Europe and the United States, there's going to be a very different basic understanding of what God means than what. And there are a lot of Buddhists in the United States, but not really that many. And the religious tradition is extremely didactic and limited in most cases, right? And so I mean, I understood it. I understood it as I understood what you were saying earlier in reference to the scientists playing God and that being sort of a theme. But I think it needs more development. And I do think if you're looking at bringing this to a Western audience, that it's something that has to be examined carefully.
My ideas about the first one, you can see the giant wall in the diagonal. It's an apartment in the city in the near future, and wall is made by, I think the wall is made by the rusty steel. I feel the texture and the technology put together, I think it might be an interesting thing to try. And after reading Poe's script, I think the big twist is very attractive. I like it, and I just imagine what's the big moment, what big thing happening at the end. So you can see the second pictures. I just imagine the giant big wall just go away, and you can see the theater revealed. The theater ceiling revealed is filled with fluorescent lights to create a giant big lab on the stage, and you can see the man in a fish tank like box, like he trapped it in a big box like a lab rat at the end.
First of all, I do like the color. I do like the color and the scratches. In the first photo, it actually makes certain humane feelings in this very science fictional script at the beginning, and then at the end it becomes like a more experimental scientist lab, and it creates great contrast. That's something we like about it. However, we were discussing that maybe it's possible to make this what we call humane feeling kind of sense image or atmosphere just within that small box. And if it's possible, I think it will be ideal for this small box to be movable, or can be like a turntable-ish things. So in different scene, we can turn it into a different angle and create different atmosphere. Since it's a 1 hour-ish solo show, we of course we want to create as much as like visual differences as possible, just to add some theatrical moments visually. So we were kind of hoping to narrow it down a little bit to make it like one object, like a center setting of this production, and then let's see what we can play with. We on top of it or within that object, which for now at this point is that square-ish water tank object for now. Also, yeah, and then we started to talk about maybe this glass-ish like wall in this water tank square can be made of like a certain screen with specific texture.
One of the main visual metaphors in the script as it is now is glass and mirrors, right? And glass, really, there are very few things that look like glass.
Heavy.
Are glass. Glass is very heavy. So one of the solutions might be to find a transparent plastic that can be installed by tension rigging, right?
Somehow we are waiting for the hardware design, and that can make us have more imagination about the visual things. Actually, today I found this structure, like this one. It can lots of way can structure like this. We can use this to modularize things, and it can make lots of different shape on the stage. And we can project the visual on this part.
I have a quick question. What kind of texture is that? Can it be Can it be totally invisible, like transparent at some point with the lighting, or it's gonna be?
Change this material. I can change this material.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. That kind of thing. However, you need a material that can be perfectly clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you need a material that can be misted or fogged up, and you need a material that can sort of disappear also. So clear plastic is good. You can make it disappear with the right lighting by just making sure that no light hits it, right?
It's still kind of material testing, not really about the content.
Do you use Isadora?
Yeah.
Or Max, you use Isadora? Okay. So
Yeah.
Isadora can be a really great prototyping tool.
Yeah, I will make a small scale prototyping for testing this material and the structure.
Yeah.
And I think this can make the stage design more imagination.
I mean, I would suggest that you make a list of critical effects and elements that you want maybe the duplicated person, the atmospheric.
You mean like a
fog, and then put together, get out a video camera or find an animator or whatever, and make scale models and get a little Pico projector and see if it works.
Okay.
And then see if that image is adequate for you.
Okay.
And that might answer some questions.
Okay.